Good morning, y'all, y buenos dias. So we are here to talk about decolonizing our history. This video has been highly requested and I'm so glad to finally be sitting down and talking to y'all about this. So if y'all are interested, then keep on watching. Okay, so for a lot of y'all, the question is, what does it mean to decolonize history? What do those words entail? And so to me, decolonizing history means being aware that our history has been written with an agenda, right? Has been written with a certain purpose. And so our job in decolonizing history is to be okay with reevaluating every single bit of history that we have ever been taught. And so that's a big step. That's a really big step into not only learning more about ourselves, but also learning about other marginalized people who their history has been written from the perspective of the colonizer and not by those people themselves. And so that's the first step, is understanding the fact that the history that we have been taught in our traditional schooling here in the West in particular has been orchestrated and has been intentionally written a certain way. And so coming to terms with that can be really heavy for a lot of us. It's like, wow, everything that I've been taught has either been a lie or has been construed in a certain way in order to get a certain message out there. And so that's really the first step of handling this, is understanding and coming to terms with the fact that our history has been fictitious, has been exaggerated, has been erased in many cases. And so taking that first step will really set us up to being more open and more capable of not only unlearning, but also learning what will come. And so going along with that, recognizing that that history was written with a purpose. And what do I mean by history being written with a purpose? If you take, for example, people who have been the human traffickers during the times of enslavement, those people who wrote those narratives wrote that those enslaved people wanted to be enslaved. They wrote that it was for their own good that they were enslaved. And so obviously the people who benefited from those atrocious acts wrote about them in a way that benefited them. They wrote in a way that they were still the good guys. And so we have to realize that these narratives come with those purposes. They come with that agenda of who wrote it is always going to be the good guy, right? And so we have to be very aware of who has written those various texts. And so by recognizing that if it's a colonizer who is writing about these so-called savage natives, you really have to take it with a grain of salt what his opinion of these people are, if his sole purpose is to colonize, enslave, and rape and pillage these people. And so by being aware, by understanding the reasoning behind a lot of these texts, you're able to sort of click and understand, like, wow, no wonder that person's saying that, because they were trying to obtain all of their goods. They were trying to obtain all of their land. They were trying to literally enslave their people. Obviously, they're gonna say things in a certain way about that group of people. And so by understanding that perspective, by really coming to terms with the fact that the majority of the stuff that we are taught, especially from my perspective, I grew up in Southern Louisiana and I went to a public school all throughout my life. And so by understanding where that idea comes from, you're more able to get why it's written that way, why certain texts are just so wrong, like just so wrong, right? Growing up as a kid, you know, we had this idea of what Thanksgiving looked like, of Columbus Day, all of these ideas that now, you know, now with more Black, Indigenous people of color writing their own narratives, we're able to understand the truth, right? It's almost now very much common knowledge that Christopher Columbus was just some hot garbage, right? And so now it's more and more understood that that's what it is. But even whenever I was a kid, it was like Columbus Day, and like, you know, like it was a whole big thing of it being celebrated, and now we understand. And so that's how we need to take all of these different steps in order to really understand what our true history has been. And in particular for us as Meso-Indigenous people, a lot of our history has been so erased and so rewritten from the narrative of the conquistadores, of the colonizers, that we forget, not only intentionally but like non-intentionally, our rich, diverse, incredible history that we have. And I think that that will tie into how we see ourselves as people. You know, when we aren't taught the incredible inventions that we created, the incredible math sequences that we created, all the literature that was written, all of these different things, we see ourselves as less than because of the fact that we are taught from a very Eurocentric point of view. Our history begins post-colonization. That is so not true. And so by learning these things and unlearning these things, we're able to better understand not only history, which is good to know, but also ourselves as people, and be able to truly appreciate the immense diversity that we have. You know, growing up, we hear about all of these great civilizations that are European and all these great things that they did and all of the adventures and all these, you know, amazing things that happen, when our history is an elective, right? Our history is like a little tiny add-on, but European history is like the main course. And I'm very lucky to see that so many current history teachers are no longer teaching that way, which is so exciting. And I have so many of y'all who are friends who are history teachers, and y'all are throwing that old school stuff just out of the way and teaching history the way that it's truly supposed to be taught, which is like intersectional, right? Everything interconnects. And seeing that is really, really exciting. And seeing that normal people, I'd say like me, you know, normal people who are no longer in, you know, an academia institution, but we're still learning and unlearning. And hopefully you watching this video, you're trying to do that too, because there's no age and there's no grade level for this, right? This is a lifelong journey. And I think that that's, sometimes it can be really disheartening because you're like, wow, I just want to get to a certain point where I'm like, I did it, I'm decolonized. But that's so not how it works. It's so interconnected, and we have so many different things woven together that it's a lot of work, and it's lifelong work. We're always going to be unlearning and relearning stuff forever. And so the next question is how do you decolonize your history? And so the number one thing is you have to be willing to unlearn and relearn, and you have to be excited and you have to be hyped about wanting to do these things, because it is a lot of work. It's not going to be an easy process because of the fact that so much fictitious work or so much intentional bullshit has been out there for so long that we have created this belief in that that's just how it's been. And so it is going to take some work. It is going to take some time to be able to really hone in onto what is true history, what is the truth, what really happened from the perspective of those people. And so you have to be willing to want to do those things. It's challenging work and it's hard work to really sit down and be like, wow, all of that stuff that I believed for so long wasn't true. And so you have to be able to sit with that, and you have to be willing and able to put that work in, to want to move forward from this. And another suggestion that I really have in order for how to do it is you gotta be wanting to read these books, because a lot of the information is out there. We just gotta put in the work of obtaining the information. So whether you are reading a physical book, reading an ebook, or listening to it on an audiobook, you have to be able to get this information, because the information is written. A lot of this work is already done. We just have to absorb it, right? Which is great. We just have to put in the work. And so I'll link below a video of how I read as much as I do. And I give a lot of different resources for where to get different books. But yeah, you have to want to obtain this information, whether that's, like I said, through audiobooks, through library books, through books that you buy, thrifted books, whatever that may be. I'm also going to link several history pages down below as well. I follow different Instagram pages of different groups of people who are explaining their history, which is super great to see. And that kind of goes along with my next point. What should I read? And to read, you have to read books that are written by the people who have been colonized, by the people who have been marginalized, because they need to be explaining their story. They need to be explaining their own narrative as opposed to someone else, right? If you want to learn about indigenous people, listen to Indigenous people. If you want to listen to Black people, you have to listen to them. You have to listen to their own stories. And that goes for any kind of marginalized group. You want to learn about women? Listen to women. You want to learn about the people in the LGBTQ community? Listen to them. They are the ones that need to be telling the story. And so I will link down below a bunch of really awesome books that I have found so critical in my journey in learning all of this stuff and unlearning and relearning all of this stuff that I found just so great. And I'll also show y'all a couple that I have back here. So now my bookshelf is all wonky because I have all the books in my hand, but these are just a few. Again, I'll link below tons more because I've had them either from the library or I gifted them or I've listened to them on audiobook, whatever the case may be. These are just a couple that I have physical right here. So, and Them and Us is a great one. I'll put the names of everything down below. I always suggest that you buy directly from the authors themselves because they're able to get a little bit more money that way. Or if not, you can always thrift books or split them with your friends and that way y'all can rotate them. But I always really suggest buying them if possible from the author, just to support them. An Indigenous People's History of the United States is an incredible starter book. I would really suggest this in the beginning because it kind of goes over everything in a way that is super eye-opening. White Lives Matter Most and Other Little White Lies is a great also overview type book. Unapologetic, a Black, Queer, and Feminist mandate for radical movements. Again, like I said, you have to read books written by the people in the movements themselves. Conquest, Sexual Violence, and American Indian Genocide. This is an incredible book to learn about that specific topic. This is a great one. I always love sharing this book because it's a graphic novel. It's a really quick read, but it's the 500 Years of Resistance, the comic book. The Color of Law, an incredible book where it talks about redlining and literally the drawing out of certain zonings. Really intense book. The Jim Crow, The New Jim Crow is another great one. This is basically a classic. Indian Black is an incredible story, and this is, like I said, so many of these stories are left behind or not explained or intentionally left out. These histories are our histories, y'all. We have to learn about them. The Other Slavery is, this one's a little beat up. A lot of people have read this one. Is, again, like I said, stories that aren't talked about, stories that we were never taught in school. And so if we don't intentionally go out to try to find these, we'll never learn about them. An American Genocide, the United States and the California Indian Catastrophe is another really great one. Like I said, there's so many, let me put these down for a second. There's so many great books. This one's one of my favorites. 500 Years of Chicana's Women History. Again, these are so many incredible people that are left out of our traditional textbooks. We aren't taught about them in school, at least not enough, at least not where I was taught. And so much of this is a lot of extra work. It is a lot of extra work to be able to go in and be like, wow, it's like I have to start all over again. We really do. That's the thing. We really do have to just start all over again. And that's okay. We're all in this journey. And like I said, I'll try to connect y'all with tons of different Instagram accounts that I think share really great information. And also different YouTube channels that talk about this as well. But yeah, we're all in this, y'all. We are all trying to learn and to try to better ourselves, to better understand our history, the people's history of different groups. And so I'm excited to be able to share this information with y'all because this is not an easy journey. It's not the easiest thing in the world to try to really sit with yourself and reevaluate everything that you've ever been taught. But that's it for today's video. I'm really excited to have been able to share this with y'all. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more information like this. As always, if you have any comments or questions, head over to my Instagram. Gracias for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later.